Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. A lot is going on in the hockey world, and I think Matt wants to kick us off because he seems pretty heated. When we turned on the camera, it looked like he'd been crying. So let's see what he has to say.
So if you're watching this, you're most likely a New York Rangers fan, and my name is Matthew Ferklow. I'm a Leaf fan, but I do like the Rangers because in my childhood, the Leafs were bad and the Rangers were good. So I guess that kind of makes some sense. So anyways, James Dolan, the owner of the New York Rangers and the New York Knicks, who is hated by all New York fans. You don't even have to be a fan of either two teams. You just know he's bad. He fired John Davidson and Jeff Gorton, who have only been on the job for a short time, and they're doing a rebuild because he doesn't think the rebuild's fast enough, even though I would say their young guys are exciting and they're growing. And also, he didn't just do it at the end of the season. He did it after a brawl. He didn't keep them in a loop because he posted a letter saying he didn't like what happened in the brawl. So anyways, there's just so much chaos. We're here to break everything down. It's kind of all over the point, but Josh, where do you want to start?
Well, you started about.
By the way, my name is Brandon Waterhouse. I'm part of the Orion Sportscast.
Oh, yeah, my
I
bad.
am also a Toronto Maple Leafs fan growing up. I also like the Pittsburgh Penguins. I never really had a spot for the New York Rangers. They always had Sean Avery on their team during the prime of their era, and he was one of the biggest dickheads known to man. Sorry to interrupt you, Josh, but let's fucking throw the deep alley pass down to you now.
Yeah, Matt, you kind of opened up with the third step in what was an unraveling of just a shit show of events. I think we got to start at the very beginning, and that's the actual event that kicked this all off. So I think we should take it event by event. And we, luckily, before we started the show, we just saw kind of the conclusion of this with the big fine being handed out. So why don't we start with the actual thing that kicked it off, and that's Tom Wilson's actions on the ice against the Rangers 2 days ago. So do you want to break that down for us?
Yeah, for sure, Josh. So Tom Wilson, who's been suspended 5 times in the last 4 years and also 3 fines during his NHL career, decided to attack Artemi Panarin, who was a MVP finalist last year and might have been in the running this year if it wasn't for a situation. We don't have to talk about the Russia stuff. But anyways,
yeah.
The best player, one of the best players in the league, I don't think that's arguable. And then Tom Wilson jumped him. Oh, and before he jumped him, he pinned Pavel Buchnevich to the ground, punched him in the back of the head twice, and then he attacked Panarin. He pulled his hair, which is odd, and just put it all in a bow and wrap it up. He was flexing in the penalty box. So my opinion for this is the NHL was dumb not to suspend him, and because they didn't suspend him, all hell broke loose, and there was a brawl the next night. So we can talk about the individual situation right now, but I just think it's gutless.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah. So we're talking about the situation that started it all, and as a personal reaction for me, it was scary, right? It wasn't even hockey because you're looking at like a superstar's head being thrown around like a beach ball, and that's how Artemi Panarin gets thrown to the ground, and then he gets, as to Josh mentioned to me earlier in the week, he gets pedigreed, like almost as if it's the biggest rivalry since Randy Orton Triple H kicked like his dad-in-law's head off, if you know what I'm talking about. So it's intense. It wasn't like so the problem I had is like Panarin had no intent on physical harm in anyone in that situation. And on Artemi Panarin, to me, outside of, not knowing much about him personally, seems like the type of guy that's not trying to throw hands in a situation where gloves aren't even off yet. So taken by surprise, half the weight, half the height almost. It's scary to see as a young kid because that could easily be, because lots of players are trying to be Panarin these days and Patrick Kane. Not everyone's a Tom Wilson. And if you think that you're not going to go far because you're going to get a concussion being thrown around by the Tom Wilsons of the world, the NHL has to make a statement on that. And $5,000 out of his kiddie pool pocket is not enough.
Yeah, that original incident kind of caused I guess we could say an outrage on Twitter, and some people went a little overboard by saying he should be kicked out of the league for it. I don't know if he should be kicked out of the league. But
sorry to interrupt you, but to the penalty point, I was watching it the same night with my mother, and we saw Shane Gostisbehere do like a chintzy check from behind. He got 2 games for that.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and that was seemingly less intentful or harmful than what had happened earlier.
So let's
keep going.
Yeah. So people were saying he should be kicked out of the league. He needs to be suspended. And then we get to the post-game press conference, and the Rangers saying, "Oh, that's a gutless play. There's no respect. We hope he gets suspended." All that stuff. And we get to the next day, and I think it was around 2:00. The NHL Player Safety Department tweets out, "Tom Wilson has been fined $5,000 for roughing." He only got it on Buchnevich, right?
Yeah, not
anything for Panarin.
It was Buchnevich punched him back.
So everybody was like, okay, maybe they're treating them as two separate events, because I wrote an article, I did some research on this. I went into it, and you can be suspended for two separate events, right? So I'm like,
And
okay,
Josh,
in the same game.
Where can we find that article again?
orionhockey.com. I'll put the link down below. But when you break it down, he should have got a suspension for what he did on Panarin. Because when you break it down and look at it, he is a repeat offender that was outside the rules of the game, and it was unnecessary. He didn't need to do that. If he pinned him to the ground, this is done. Another thing is, Tom Wilson has a reputation. Yes, he might not be considered a repeat offender in the eyes of the law of the NHL, but take a look at what he's done. Like, in a playoff run, he took out 3 guys within 3 games. He broke Zach Aston Reese's jaw. He broke his jaw on a hit. So
I have this suspension issue right here.
It's a disgrace to the NHL. Yeah, read that out.
Okay, so these are not the 3 fines, and last fine not included. These are just his suspension history, and he has had a 7-8 year career, I believe, but this is starting from 2017. He was actually good the first 5 years in the league, which I guess is hockey culture or something. But September 2017, interference, 2 preseason games. So he's got suspended for the rest of the preseason. October 2017, the next month, 4 games for boarding. May 2018, so this is the same year, like the same hockey season. A legal check to the head of Zach Aston reached 3 playoff games, which you said, Josh. October 2018. So that would be the next year, like the next season. Sorry, 2018-19. He got 20 games originally for an illegal check to the head, and they put that down to 14 games because Tom Wilson appealed. I don't really remember that situation. I don't know if I was upset when it went to 20 to 14. But anyways, 20 games, that's literally a quarter of the season, but it went down to 14. And then March 2021, right before the bubble and right before this whole pandemic, he got 7 games for boarding. So this is a repeat offender. You've already slapped him on the, not even on the wrist, you punched him in the face already in terms of fines and suspensions. So I don't understand how you do something like this and you don't take it from the 20 games to like a playoff series like Nazem Kadri got for the cross check. Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, there's no consistency here for NHL player safety. And Josh, I know you don't like NHL player safety. So is there anything you just want to say about how they conduct themselves throughout the whole year in your article?
I guess now is the correct time to talk about NHL player safety because it rolls into what continued to happen after that. So yeah, they released that Tom Wilson's only been fined $5,000. People were pissed about that. I was pissed about that. 1 game, I think, would have been appropriate. Maybe 2. The rest of the season, because that's 3, sure. But then you look at who it is. It's Tom Wilson. You're like, well, he's not learning. Like, you got to slap this
He's
guy.
literally flexing in the penalty box, yeah.
You got to, slap him with, like, suspend him for the rest of the season and the playoffs. Like, then he'll learn, because he's not going to do that again, because he's hurting his team at that point. Tom Wilson's a valuable player to his team, for sure. I think we can all agree with that. But when he's doing dumb shit like this and injuring people on the ice, that's not a valuable player to your team. You're hurting your team. You're hurting the other team. People don't want to see that. Now, the Rangers put out a statement, and I'll pull the statement up and read it word for word because it was kind of a bombshell. We haven't seen anything like this released from an NHL point of view. Matt or Brandon, do one of you just want to give a quick background on who George Parros is and what type of player he was in the league? Because he is the head of NHL player safety and hands out the suspensions. We haven't really touched.
Yeah, I'll go quick. I'm sure Matt has a little bit more specifics about him now, but if you remember as a player, George Laraque was a box filler. Shout out to Upper Deck. They made a card just around the tough guys this year called the box fillers, and it's actually a nice insert. Regardless, it's just for tough guys and penalty and players who just took penalties their whole career. Ty Domi highlights that list. George Laraque, and so George Parros, rather, it wasn't a guy that would follow the rules. He was type of the guy that was on your fourth line fighting, but he didn't have as much skill as Tom Wilson. He had the height and size, and he established himself as type of a guy who would knock you in the face and might even knock you out if you weren't paying attention because he was a dirty player. And took us all by surprise when he decided to take on the player safety role way back when. So it's interesting now seeing him make the decisions on the type of players that he used to be, right?
Right. And what's important with this, does anybody remember the game he fought Colton Orr twice? In the second fight, he fell over Colton Orr and hit head first into the ice, pretty much knocking himself out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So that happened, and that was very similar to what almost happened to Panarin. So that was kind of surprising. Just thought we put in. So the New York Rangers.
Wait, before you read the statement, what's your point? Why are you saying that? Like his career in player safety? Like I don't really see a coordination. Are you saying because he got his face pile drived, he should be more aware and take that more seriously?
Yes, he should. Is that what you're trying to say? He should be more aware of what's going on the ice and the dangers of the way these guys are playing because he
got his
Because
head
he was
smashed.
the guy he was the type of guy who would have to hear from NHLPA a lot back in his day. And you would think that he knows how to, I mean, I can't say work the system, but he would know what the system is consisted of, considering he probably went through a couple suspensions and penalty issues himself way back when. So I think that for him to take it, almost as a joke right now is kind of concerning.
Yeah. So after this was announced, the Rangers released this on Twitter. The New York Rangers are extremely disappointed that Capitals forward Tom Wilson was not suspended for his horrifying act of violence last night at Madison Square Garden. Wilson is a repeat offender with a long history of this type of acts, and we find it shocking that the NHL and their Department of Player Safety failed to take the appropriate action and suspend him indefinitely. Wilson's dangerous and reckless actions cause an injury to Artemi Panarin that will prevent him from playing again this season. We view this as a declaration of duty by the NHL head of player safety, George Peros, and believe he is unfit to continue for his current role. So in short, the Rangers are pissed off that Wilson wasn't suspended, and they're calling for George Peros' job. An NHL team has never put out that type of statement before. So what followed this was what Matt opened the show with. Why don't you take us into the departure of the GM and the president?
So just to recap what we've been. Tom Wilson punched Pavel Buchnevich in the back of the head. He then body slammed Artemi Panarin, who's one of the best players in the league, head first in the ice practically. If you want to, we could debate that, but that's not the point. He body slammed Artemi Panarin, didn't get suspended. So the New York Rangers put out this statement. And usually I would guess a statement like this would come from your president. Like for the Leafs, your Shanahan, Colorado, Sakic, like I would assume president. But we later found out that it came from James Dolan, who I'm going to assume he does not know a lot about hockey because he fired people. And in my opinion, it was unjust.
Yes.
So the rumor is in the Rangers management group and just a whole organization, Dolan wanted to do this statement, which led to a $250,000 fine, 250 G's.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
And John Davidson, the former president, and Jeff Gorton, the GM, did not approve and thought it could have been handled differently.
They tried to separate themselves from the statement.
They tried to separate from the statement because they know it was coming. And if you ask them about a statement that they don't know was coming, I don't really know what you would say. So you should separate because there's going to be a brawl in the next 12 hours anyways, regardless. But James Dolan weighed that. He also said, our team didn't make the playoffs, and we announced the rebuild 3 years ago. This is taking too long. I don't like our team's performance. You guys are fired. And the reason I think this is unjust is because the New York Rangers just picked first and second overall, and those players are rookies and sophomore. And I don't really care what anyone says. Crosby's first year and the couple years of Pittsburgh, they were bad. They picked Stahl, they picked Fleury. It was terrible. The Rangers have never been bad, and the reason I'm saying that is because they won both draft lotteries. But just to kind of break down President John Davidson, because he came in 2019, his first move, and just tell me if this is good or bad, he signed Artemi Panarin.
Yeah, it's a good move.
Is that a good move? Yes.
Yeah.
His next move, he traded for Adam Fox, who in a regular season would be on pace for 74 points. He traded 2 seconds to acquire Adam Fox. Brandon, is that a good move?
Yeah, I would agree so.
Exactly.
He's going to be up to the chorus, right?
I think he's second right now behind Hedman, but regardless, and he's only 23. So Panarin's 28. This guy's 23. Your first and second overall picks are 19 and 20 respectively. And on top of that, you got a goalie from Russia, Igor Shesterkin, who looks like the real deal, and he's 24. So all of this, in my opinion, would say that the rebuild is successful. And on top of that, the only teams above you are Boston, who've been good for the last decade, Pittsburgh, who's been good for the last decade, Washington, who's been good for the last decade, and the Islanders, who I would argue are probably one of the best defensive teams in hockey. They play boring, but it doesn't matter. So coming into this season, it was realistic to have the expectation that you would not make the playoffs. But for some unknown reason, James Dolan thinks this team's underachieved. So Josh, Brandon, whoever wants to take it away, do you think this team is underachieved this year? And do you think John Davidson and Jeff Gorton should be fired?
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Matt. I'm really happy you broke it down the way you did. Hopefully everyone can understand the whole magnitude of the game. Magnitude of the situation rather. Something that's news to me is I didn't know James Dolan had his hands on that release statement. I thought that it was a little bit different in terms of the GMs might have released it and then he fired them for releasing it. So great clarification there. And as I'm looking at it now, yeah, the Rangers are 10 points behind the New York Islanders for that last spot. They're already officially eliminated. But even then, right, they're that team. They're 5 points ahead of the team behind them, and they're that team on the brink. Especially if you thought of a regular season where it was 1 through 8, they actually would be ahead of the Montreal Canadiens and 1 point behind of the Jets. If you're thinking the whole conference, so way back when they would be making a 1 to 8 conference here. So that's an impressive season, as you mentioned. Like rebuilds. I mean, you mentioned a rebuild a long time ago, which I'm just not like, I'm not against it. I'm not against it. But like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin was a decent rebuild that also won a cup when they were pretty young, and they went to a cup before that to the very end, the same year before. So they had a run when they were young. However, they were pretty pathetic when like they had the first teams with Mario Lemieux on it still. And I think you can look at the Matthews maybe in the Leafs, and they had a playoff run right away in their first season as a rebuild. So as a rebuild working here, and Matt breaks it down, I think that the GM, it is unjust. You can see that the additions and the progress of the team is positive. It's not going down. If a rebuild's a rebuild, you'd be a little bit worse in the standings, and you would be still projected to be low. But Matt brings up a good point. They still, if you're not getting the both number 1 picks, you still get a lottery if you're getting 1 and 2. And considering that Lafreniere almost had who knows if it's a bust year, you'd hope that his progression is going up further, and that he's only getting a little bit more confident as the season progresses. It sucks that I honestly think it sucks that James Dolan oversees both of these sports as the MSG New York person. So it's a poor statement. I think that it could have been handled differently. I'm glad that you mentioned that the president and the GM tried to separate themselves from the statement. So, I mean, you bring it up that I think we can throw this to Josh now.
Yeah, it's when they released that statement and then the GMs were fired like 2 hours later, GM and president were fired. I was like, damn, they're going to say this isn't related. It is totally related. Like, you do not fire your president and GM with 3 games left in the season. That's a joke. It kind of led, like, it was a rough 48 hours for that Rangers franchise and the NHL players. Like, we're only halfway through this. Let's get to the next thing, and then I guess we can kind of recap it all with our thoughts. Because the puck drops at MSG, but there's still a game happening tonight, right? This kind of got lost. We're not done yet. There's a game coming on. Tom Wilson's playing. Everyone else is playing except for Artemi Panarin. TJ Oshie's coming back. He's returning after the passing of his father, which was rather unfortunate. So there's a lot of storylines going into this game. And the game starts, and less than 1 second in, we have a line brawl. So, Matt, why don't you take us away with that?
So, yeah, just in hockey, this is coming. David Quinn, the coach of the Rangers, is the home team. So he puts his fight card in, not his fight card, sorry, his lineup card.
Pretty much what it was.
Which ended up being a fight card. You put the fourth line on, you put your tough defenseman on. And then if you're the Capitals coach, you know where it's going. You're not going to put on Backstrom. Like this, like we know, like let's just get it over with. So he put on Hathaway. Who else? It was Hathaway, Nick Dowd, and I think Carl Hagelin or whatever. So right off the top, we have a good old-fashioned line brawl. They go all 3 fights really weren't that major. Like, it wasn't like the New Jersey Rangers brawl like 10 years ago with Torts. That was different. So we had a good line brawl right off the jump. But the only problem is Wilson was not involved. And it's like, okay, we don't really want to fight everyone. We want to fight Wilson. But guess who comes out on the next shift? It's Tom Wilson. So literally, as soon as he touches the puck, I think there's only a couple thousand fans at MSG. They all start booing. And I'm like, yo, it's about to go down. Someone's coming at Wilson with a stick up, trying to slash him. And before said player can slash him in the back of the leg, Brendan Smith already jumps him. So, like shit's going down, Like, this is a fight. Like, it's go time. So Smith and Wilson are throwing them. Brendan Smith did actually pretty good in that fight, I would say. And then there's some other scruffles happening on the ice. So we have 4 fights in the first minute. And then I think it wasn't Strome. Someone else had a fight, then Strome had a fight. So it was basically just a brawl the whole night, throwing body shots. Buchnevich cross-checked Manta in the face. It was just crazy. I don't even know where to start. But I think the line brawl. And Brandon, I just want to ask a question. Playing junior hockey, because if you guys don't know, Brandon was a junior hockey player on this podcast, sorry. one day. Anyways, Brandon, have you ever been in this situation where you just kind of know, like maybe it's like Georgetown versus Caledon or just those type of
games? Yeah, especially no. Some rivalries are like bound to happen and to have instances every game, and some are like consistent things stemming from an incident such as this. So like, for example, I've had a situation where like a player takes a shot at your coach over your head behind your back because your coach is a little out of shape or looks a little rough around the edges, and they take a shot at your coach. And like junior C hockey or junior B hockey, people are a little rough around the edges and they're not too afraid to say what they want to say. There's not many people watching, and I think it comes together as a team to protect your coach, and then you're going to have a big, and especially playoff series in local small towns can get really, really, really harsh, and it brings the fans in it. And if it's a small arena, you can have fans arguing and fighting themselves. But I think the thing that highlights this the most is like the amount of players in each penalty box during that game that couldn't even squeeze in the amount of area that fitted.
If that was in Ontario, they'd be fine.
Yeah, exactly. But I think there's differences between like a Toronto Maple Leafs and a Montreal Canadiens rivalry where you might not have a spark every every game. Maybe you'll have a 5-game series, but then one game you'll have, oh yeah, that's why it's the Montreal and Toronto rivalry. That's why it's tough hockey. But when this situation comes around and you see like a Washington and New York, it's really situational. And I think that obviously if you're going after a star player, I think that the NHL has to realize that it is still the culture to go after them the next time.
Yeah, it's let me just read off like what happened. So Nick Dowd fought Kevin Rooney, Carl Hagelin fought Colin Blackwell, Garnet Hathaway fought Philip de Giuseppe. I don't even know how to say that.
Philip de Giuseppe.
Yeah, Brandon Smith fought Tom Wilson, and then we had Michael Raffi. Yeah, Michael Raffi fought Andy Potato, and Ryan Strome fought Lars Eller.
Don't forget about cross-check to the face.
So, and then we had a cross-check to the face as well. So,
Josh, can I just take it from here? I think this is so the NHL's fault. Because the precedent they sent in the Tuesday night game was the goon on said team, whether it's Tom Wilson, Lucic, Marcus Foligno, we can throw in whoever you want to throw in a scrum, is allowed to body slam Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Crosby to the ice, helmetless. It's allowed. Like, if I was a goon right now, I would get so happy for a playoff series. Like, pick your team. I would be jumping people. It would be madness. Like,
Wayne Simmons tonight should just pedigree Cole Caufield.
Like, yeah, just jump him. Like, it's anything goes. Just jump him. And like I was saying to like the people in my house, like, yo, like all these fights, I want to fight someone now. Like, I just think we have this like.
He wants to take down his household.
Yeah, Matt just went and fought his dad.
Yeah.
What's that? We'll put a picture of Tom Wilson on your face today.
Yeah, I didn't need to add that, but like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it gets like people like going. So I just definitely think the NHL set a dangerous precedent. And I'm a Leaf fan. We live in Toronto, all three of us, if you didn't know. And if Mitch Marner gets jumped, it's anything goes. Like Nylander, you're gonna have to drop the gloves. Like, this is like a weird time in hockey we're living in. And Josh, I saw you tweeting some stuff, so we can just address it right now. Is you said you don't like that all the enforcers are suddenly coming back, and you don't think Sean Avery should be caught. You want to address that? Because I don't really understand what you're saying. I read part of it.
Sean Avery chimed in saying the one thing he would do was he would jump the boards and just charge the goalie. Like,
I would do the same thing.
Yeah, but Sean Avery needs to shut the fuck up. Like, seriously. And then we had
I believe him.
John Scott weighed in. He actually had a pretty good take on it. He said Wilson should be slapped with the book. Who else weighed in? We had a couple other like former enforcers. Yeah, Georges
Laraque, Colton Orr, everyone was going.
Yeah, Colton Orr weighed in.
You mentioned Sean Avery?
Yeah, but Sean Avery just had the dumbest take. He's like, I would throw myself at. He said Braden Holtby for some reason. I don't know why Braden Holtby is involved in this. Braden Holtby plays.
Yeah, he thought he was still in Washington. That's why he said that.
He's like, yeah, I would be. He's like, I would charge Braden Holtby. I'm like, why? But it was.
Oh, Matt Cook also had something to say on it.
Yeah, Matt Cook. I'm like, okay. Talking. And then, what's his name? The dude from Chicklets.
Biz. No, Whitney.
Ryan Whitney.
It was Whitney, yeah.
Yeah, he uploads like a 7-second clip of him looking like a 12-year-old. What a donkey that was! Like, holy crap, we don't need to hear from these guys that have been hit in the head too many times. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just these former enforcers whose ways are set the way that they're speaking from a Tom Wilson point of view. like that point of that part of the game is not there anymore.
No, Josh, let me explain. Let me explain Sean Avery's point, because I agree with Sean Avery's point. What he is saying is, in this situation, everyone's going to go after Wilson. I'm not doing that because that's what they want. Wilson's 6'5". No, let me explain. Because Wilson.
Remember what he did with Martin Brodeur? He just.
That's what he's saying. He's saying, I am going after the goalie, because what are they going to do? Go after my goalie? Because if I run the goalie and they run my goalie 2 seconds later, it's going to look so bad. So what he was saying is he's dumping the puck in, he's punching guys, and he's doing all this crazy stuff. That was his point. I don't think he would actually do that, but what he's saying is the league set the precedent that everything's going to shit. So for me to like reel it back in, I'm taking out the goalie. That was his logic.
That was the dumbest logic ever, though.
I'm explaining his logic.
We've talked a lot about the Rangers, though.
Yeah. So, okay. And then finally, so that game finishes, blah, blah, blah. Everything's happened. And then today it was released. Where did it go? The NHL released a statement that said they got a big slap on, well, it's not really a slap on the wrist. They got like $250,000 fines. What did they say? I can't find it. So yeah, Pavel, and out of all this, Pavel Buchnevich has a hearing today for high sticking Anthony Mantha. And then the NHL fined the New York Rangers $250,000 for their comments about George Parros. So that puts a nice little bow on things. So
wait, just talking about George Parros before we move on. Why does he still have the job? Because people didn't like him before this. Like, this isn't a once incident. Like, he's so inconsistent. And don't you agree that he should not be in charge of player safety?
It should be someone who has nothing to do with the game.
People, they have to know the rules and stuff.
Yeah, no. But like,
they need to
be a medical professional who looks at it from a logistical standpoint of this. If it was like a regular person on the street and the rules, and she has the rule, he or she, they have the rule books in front of them, and they have no experience to go off of, which is what George has, and they have no relationships. They can't be attached to any GMs, any coaches,
three
any
people,
players.
No, it should be like a board. Like maybe you have a player, you have a GM. And then you have
I don't know about these fucking players. I like Josh's point. Bring in some people who just know health and safety and sport, and they might just be professional sport organization members, and they might not even be like, I don't want them to be connected to anyone in NHL.
Yeah,
but hockey has a lot of unwritten rules that you need to be aware of.
Josh, do you know what I mean?
But Matt, I know what you, Matt. Why are we bringing in former players to do this? It's clearly not working. The closest person to get it right was Brendan Shanahan. I thought Shanahan did a great job.
Yeah, but he's a former player.
Okay, yes, but let me finish explaining. When he announced the suspension, even if we didn't think he got it right, the video would come out. At least he was explaining himself. You know what I mean? And then he would use past examples. He'd be like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see where he's coming from. George Parros just says, yeah, 5K.
Yeah, I think he actually makes it up. It's kind of funny.
Like, did he spin the wheel when he woke up? Did he call Tom and say, "Hey, how much do you want?" Like, fuck.
That's what I mean. Maybe he knows Tom.
Well, he does, because Tom is a representative of Parros' brand called Violent Gentleman, which is your head of player safety has a brand called Violent Gentleman.
That's an important side to note to make to this conversation.
They go together.
Just make now. You just made that now, and that could bring a. That's a big point, because familiarity, as I was mentioning earlier, when you thought about bringing people who had no idea from hockey to this board, I agree with that. Look at these two making a brand for themselves outside of hockey. Of course, they're getting a little bit easy on each other when they're inside the ropes, right?
Yeah, it's stupid, and they need to bring in someone who will enforce the rules fairly and set a precedent. Because, when Shanahan gave Torres 41 games, that was a harsh suspension, but he explained why he did it. And did Torres do anything again after that?
I don't think he played again after that.
Okay, well, there you go. So
I hope not, because people like Torres don't deserve to play.
Right. So let's put
a nice UFC fight.
Yeah. So just switching gears here. Yeah. So we'll upload this. If you're a Rangers fan, thanks for watching. If you're anybody, thanks for watching. Now we're going into our regular podcast, and the regular podcast. You guys want to stick around? Stick around. We're talking about the Leafs. We'll be talking about all the Canadian division. Seattle, we're going to talk about races, and we're also going to talk about the Aaron Rodgers situation. Then we're going to go into match debates. So if you're a fan of this, you saw this for the first time, our website, where Josh wrote an article about player safety. Josh, you want to talk about that really quickly for our new viewers?
Yeah, I just wrote an article about what player safety is doing wrong. It's not necessarily focused on Tom Wilson, but I use that as an example, and then we just go into how it's structured and what they need to do to change. I believe, Brandon, you're working on something too, right?
Yeah, and for further notice, the website in general has just been updated and is in plan to be continue to be adding with articles, videos, links, and memes. If we can even make something funny, make you guys laugh.
You want to do
But
it?
regardless, the website is something that you can find if you look hard enough, and especially if you find us in the description. Josh will put it there. We're just looking. Don't expect the biggest article to break news, but we're going to give us your opinion.
Yep.
No,
we're going to give we're going to give you our opinion.
There you go.
Yep.
All right.
So anyways, now we're going to go to our regular podcast programming. So stick with us. And Josh, let's just switch it to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay. The Leafs, they lost 3-2 to the Habs in overtime.
Wait. I forgot. Josh made fun of Cole Caufield. I think his exact words were Cole Coffee. He made fun of his height and weight, even though he's taller than Josh and more weight than Josh.
He's the same height as me.
He has 20 pounds on you, though, so
that's fine.
Watch out. So anyways, he absolutely is disgusting. 2 games.
He's only effective in 3-on-3 overtime. Oh, no, what a threat.
2 overtime clutch goals. Dude, like the way I'm a Leaf fan, obviously, but the way he scored against Leafs, he took it in stride, head up, ripped it bar down, sellied like a beast. And Josh, I was just laughing at you because this is your fault. You understand? You make fun of him.
I mean, that's the only that game was going to end, wasn't it? That is literally the only possible outcome for that game.
I think you should apologize.
I will never apologize to a Hab. Ever.
Yeah, I think you should acknowledge that was a good goal.
No.
Okay, fine. Be like that.
Austin Matthews' goal against the Habs was better. Out of midair, short side snipe. Yeah, I'll take that one. I'll take Matthews on my team. I'll take Marner. I'll take Tavares. I'll take Nylander anytime over Cole Caufield or whatever his name is. Yeah, he's a good player. Sure, whatever. He ripped it up in the AHL. He's played how many NHL games has he played now?
2 and 2 goals.
He's played more than 2. They lost 5-1 last night, and this guy didn't see a minute of power play time.
That's on coaching, not him. The guy's a stud. Did you not see the Bordowski he ripped?
That's fantastic, Matt. 97% of NHL players could have scored that goal.
That's not true. I've watched Ilya Mikheyev play probably 100 games, and he would never score that goal.
I said 97%.
Okay, well, I could name 5 Leafs that won't score that goal.
Okay, whatever. But, still, Habs fans are jumping to conclusions, quickly, oh, my God, this guy's the savior. Okay, let me know when he scores a 5-on-5 goal. God's sakes.
Yeah. I mean, Cole Caufield,
I'm just gonna open a window quickly. It's getting warm in here.
No worries. It's hard because in this situation, Matt is trying to get something out of Josh that Josh will not ever let come out of his leaf-bodied mouth, and that's just sad because maybe Josh is not going to be able to recognize the fact that Cole Caufield is, potentially a player for the Montreal Canadiens that can revolutionize their offense moving forward, especially with the small, talented, speedy, skill type of player that obviously you don't want to build a whole team of them, but having a 1 or 2 of them, kind of like Mitch Marner, as Josh mentioned, is never going to be a bad situation for your team, especially if they can play with confidence, because you never want a small guy playing scared, but if you have a small guy playing with confidence, then there's nothing wrong with that. You've clearly seen what he's done. Matt's mentioned his great shot, his goals, and his clutchness. That's clutch. If you're scoring in overtime, you want the puck and you want to score. To Josh's point, he's a little bit stubborn. You can never change that, but that's why we love him. And he's a Leafs fan down deep, and I think it's okay for him not to apologize for Cole Caufield because the season's not over, and he might be apologizing if the Habs eliminate the Leafs somehow, and then Cole Caufield's the front runner of that situation. We'll have a different discussion in a couple months, and if he doesn't apologize, well, then I might have to go DM Cole Caufield.
He's played 6 games. He has 2 goals. I don't know why everyone's getting so hyped about this guy.
Are you guys getting hyped about the Frederik Andersen stint and returning back to the NHL with a little bit of play in the A?
Yeah, so he's actually playing today. The Marlies play at 3:00, so I might check that out. He's playing half a game in the AHL, which is kind of weird. You don't usually see a half a game stint, but the Marlies season is almost done and wrapped up. They're not doing playoffs this year, so they might as well use it for developmental and recovery for Anderson. So He's going to play half a period, see how he looks. I don't know what's going to come out of this though, because after tonight, the Leafs only have 4 games left. Like, does Anderson play half a period, or half a game, say he feels good, and then plays on Saturday against the Canadians? Like, what are we looking at here?
I expect him to play 1 full game before the playoffs start, but I'd love to hear what Matt has to say.
Well, yeah, I think goalies are just kind of different beasts. So, like, I have no idea what the plan is, but I'm just so comfortable that they have a plan, you know? Like, I don't see Kiefer Dubas freaking out. I think that was a very aggressive move, saying I'll put probably, arguably, one of the best goalies in the last 5 years, maybe. He's been pretty good for the Leafs. This year, he's had some up and downs because of injury, but just in general, he's a good goalie. So him in the AHL is going to be kind of funny. And when I saw that it's only for half the game, I definitely think, okay, they don't care. It's just kind of testing him out. And I don't really know all these rules specifically, but I think this is more just cap shenanigans and just waiting until the first game of the playoffs. And I honestly think, I don't know why I have this feeling, but I think he's going to start first game of the playoffs. I really do.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, sorry, Josh, I'll let you go, but I just want to, while this is on my mind, I think that if anything was going to happen that first series against the team in the Canadian division with familiarity would be where familiarity? Yeah. I don't even know how to say the word today, boys. Sorry. But that first situation with the Habs and the Leafs and how they've played throughout the whole season and how it could be a pretty dominant victory for the Leafs, I can see why they might want to try with Anderson, and maybe they could have the wiggle room to lose a game too. Who knows? Like, obviously, I'm not trying to lose a game, but you can never expect Anderson to be ready, thrown right into the bat in the playoff game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think you got to be really careful with your goaltending, because we all know how important a win it. Like, that first game in the playoffs, that decides, like, that sets the momentum, right? So it's looking like it's going to be Montreal. Winnipeg won last night, and Montreal lost, so there was a 4-point gap there. Now it's going to be tough to make up with the amount of games they have left, but it is possible. So, you know, do you want to drop a game? Do you want to risk putting Freddie Anderson in game 1 and then dropping that? No. The other question is Carey Price going to be at the other end? Because that sets the tone. Because if Carey Price is at the other end, you got to put your best goalie in too. You can't be messing around. You know.
What's up with Carey Price?
Concussion.
Okay.
He could be playing tonight, but I doubt he will. So you know, it's going to be interesting what they do. Right now, as things stand, if the playoffs were to start tonight, Jack Campbell is your starter. I would feel more comfortable. I'm going to feel more comfortable about Freddie after I see what he does today and just seeing him play some NHL time too. I think that's fair to say. Matt, what's next?
Yeah, so Josh, you actually mentioned the Winnipeg Jets got their first W, but before that, I think they went 7 straight games with losing. Like, I think they might have got like a stupid pity point, but they were on an absolute tear down to the bottom, and we actually kind of carved in Mark Scheifele and Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler in one of our other pods. Check that out, everybody. But I just think in Winnipeg, it's getting to the point where their hockey team needs a culture change. Like, I don't know if it's a coach. I don't know if it's an aggressive trade. Maybe you trade like a first-round pick for Matthias Ekholm in the offseason. I don't know. But they need to do something, because I honestly just feel like it doesn't even look like anyone wants to play in Winnipeg. You know what I'm trying to say? And I was told for 2 years that Laine is the problem. Laine doesn't work hard, so he drags the whole team down. It's Laine. Then we're going to get Dubois, and we're going to be sick. And correct me if I'm wrong, but literally when they got Dubois, I think he had I think that was still the 2 weeks in quarantine. Then he got back, then he got hurt. They've just been so inconsistent. And I'm asking myself, like, who should be taking criticism now for Winnipeg, and what should they do?
I'm going a little, I'm not saying this is correct, but I always look at when there's an issue somewhere, like at work or at school or something, I say, what's the one consistent? When, what's his name left? Evander Kane left. Who was there? Mark Scheifele was there.
And Blake
Wheeler. When Dustin Byfuglien left, who was there? Take a look again. When Laine left, who was there? When a bunch of these, who's been the consistent this whole time? And they're still having the same issues. Who's been the consistent? Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. Apparently these guys are like sore losers in the dressing room, and they're constantly, I don't think the word's bullying, but like pressuring guys in.
Yeah.
They sulk. Yeah, you got to focus this way. They don't let players be themselves. And apparently it's a very commanding dressing room and a very like dictatorship run dressing room, which isn't healthy. And apparently I can see Paul Maurice being like the kind of pushover who's not stepping in to change that, right? So maybe it's a coaching change. Like, don't get me wrong, Paul Maurice, he's a great coach, but sometimes a coach isn't a fit for that. You know what I mean? Who was the coach there before Maurice?
Maurice has been the coach since like 2013. I have no idea.
So
he's the coach for this core. He's the coach for this core.
It's an issue. Maybe it's breaking up Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele. You would get a haul for either one of those guys. They're both top 20 players in the NHL.
I wouldn't trade them.
I don't think it helped. But Matt, like, what do you value more? Winning like that, and having a first and second round exit every year because your team hates playing with each other?
You know what it is? I just think everyone hates it when you lose, but everyone's gonna love it when you win. So I think you make it work with this group. But I personally do think Paul Maurice might be a pushover, but I want to switch it to Brandon. Have you ever been in a room where like maybe the captain or one of the best players like is not all in, or they're just kind of what Josh said, they're sulking, they don't really know what to do. So Brandon, as a player, like what do you even do in that situation? Because I just think it's so awkward.
That's a hard situation to be in for sure. I like that question. It resonates a lot with me, especially as my junior career came to the end. I was a leader myself with a couple letters on my chest. And I always took great pride in being a leader that wasn't the type of person that we're hearing about right now. And growing up in junior hockey, I did have a couple sulky leaders. And the worst part about a sulky leader is that, Josh kind of alluded to it. They want to have you react in the way that they react. And they want you to be as mad as losing as they're as mad as losing. And they want everything to be kind of similar and everyone's passion to be on their level, when everyone has different levels, motives, and energies towards creating their skill, their process, and a win. And some people, and I've learned just by playing with lots of different players, ages, junior hockey is great because you get to play with, people who are 21 or people who are 16. So you get to learn about a lot of different people's upbringings and how they played hockey and how everyone else treats a win in a culture. And I think the more I played, the more I realized that everyone's different. And especially as a leader, the only thing you can do as a leader is to be someone who accepts, and someone who the greatest thing for this generation is someone who, wants you to reach out to them, wants you to text them, opens up their student house to come hang over for beers after, opens up their bedroom to, if you have nowhere to sleep, if you know what I mean, after a long night at the bar. Like those type of guys who throw you in the taxi if you're having a rough night, and they just tend to take care of you. You always remember being taken care of by a teammate, especially if they were older and they were an assistant. I have a lot of good memories with
So I'll take over because I think I know what Brandon was trying to say. You want a leader to be a good friend. You want that leader to step up. We're going to pause for a second. Holy crap. Okay, we're back. We had to take a little break there because that was funny.
So I mean,
I'm gonna go back to
experience. It's great culture being in junior hockey, and going out and having drinks and having nowhere to stay is kind of the culture, and just hanging out with the boys and waking up on the stairs, floors, and couches of your teammates' rooms is something that's actually a little bit more of a memory than it is a joke. So some people might laugh at it, but it's actually a heartwarming situation. And, I have a feeling that Patrick Laine, Dustin Byfuglien, if they were getting drunk out in the streets in Winnipeg, I don't think those two, Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele, would open up their rooms, couches, basements, guest rooms, anything for these guys, because they're not those type of teammates. And I think that's my point, is that a leader of an organization, especially a professional one, has to go above and beyond. You're not just a player without a letter. And I think when you have this, this stigma around the league that you're type of a bully that we've heard about, it's not going to draw attractive players. It's not going to draw players that are team driven. And I do not think that Pierre-Luc Dubois is. I think he's the most individual player. Individuality. He'll never be a part of a team. No matter what team he goes on, he'll think that it's always about him. And I think for those situations, you had Patrick Laine trying to fit in from Finland, who just acclimated from the weather. It's pretty much the same place as where he's from. He doesn't care that it's not the central hub of the world, and he puts up 40 goals in his rookie season, and you start treating him like shit because he's not a hard worker. He's not in cardio shape. He's kind of out of shape, and he doesn't talk like a hockey player because he's funny as fuck and he doesn't understand the language yet. So you lose one of those generational players, and you get a kind of a dickhead in Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think that the leadership culture needs to change. I also think that these two players need to open up their bedrooms a little bit for their teammates.
Okay, so just to recap, Brandon, your solution was just more team bonding off the ice.
More drinks, yeah, more drinks. Who knows? I mean, it's lockdown. I know Josh is solution to lots of things is just go hit the bar and talk it out over
have
a
a
couple
beer,
beers.
figure it out. Yeah. When we
And I think
argue,
that's a
I'm like,
great hockey
have a
culture.
beer.
I mean, don't get stupid and don't do anything out of line, but like you start shooting out your problems on the ice, and then all of a sudden you're becoming friends off the ice. And sometimes it's just as simple as why do you give me those bad passes, or why do you dump and change when I want the puck? So sometimes that comes out over a shot of tequila, or sometimes it comes over a shot to the nose. But regardless, I'd love to give Josh one of those both of the days.
Oh yeah. So
So
I have a hot take.
Oh yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just think Winnipeg just needs to change something, but I think they have such a good, talented roster, especially their forwards. I wouldn't want to break that up. I would make a splash and get a good defenseman, whether free agency, trade, or whatever. But Paul Maurice has been the coach for 7 years. Yeah. I think that needs to change up. So I think your players need to put their egos aside. And how do you do that? In my opinion, you get a coach with a bigger ego than all the players.
John
so I would fight. No, because Dubois there, so you can't do that.
Oh,
I would fire Paul Maurice. I would call the guy up in Saskatchewan or wherever he's at right now.
Babs.
And I would get him Babs.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. If I was the owner, I'm giving Babs a 2-year deal. And I'm saying, Babs, you have a 2-year window. Then we're going to blow up Scheifele and Wheeler and all these guys. But do whatever you want for 2 years. And now go walk to Scheifele and do it every day and be like, you're not in charge. It's Babs' team. So, Josh, put it on Twitter. Mike Babcock in Winnipeg. That's the take. Well, I meant like our official account.
Okay. So yeah, one of you touched on Line A. I don't know if this is in our show script, but it did happen. So let's touch on that quickly. He's playing on the fourth line currently, and
that's hilarious.
In Columbus. So I just thought we'd touch on that. And John Tortorella totally lost the plot there, but just touch on that quickly. So yeah, Patrick Laine, known fourth liner. And I think he played with Martin Gerb, who's still in the league somehow.
Nathan Gerby.
Nathan Gerby?
Yeah, he's playing with Nathan Gerby. Like
John said Martin Gerb.
I don't know. Like, I don't remember his name.
What the fuck is that?
You just made up a name.
Yeah, I did.
That was so bad.
All right,
anyways,
so what's next?
I just think for Lonnie and Torts, they only have 2 games left. So if I'm Columbus's whole organization in these 2 games, I would honestly just try to wrap it up as soon as possible. And we're going to have a How to Fix Columbus video, so be on the lookout for that. Check our YouTube channel. We'll probably upload it in the next week for sure. But next, staying within the Canadian division, I just thought this was kind of funny, so I wanted to add this in. Milan Lucic waives his no-trade clause to go to the Seattle Kraken, who officially became a team last week. So I just think it's kind of funny because Calgary wants to protect people. And if I'm the GM of Calgary, who on earth do I want to protect?
No one. Like, what? Lucci's probably like, yeah, I'll waive this. Like, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah, I know. So, like, I don't even think he was doing them a favor.
Seattle is on BC time. I think he's from Vancouver area.
Seattle probably doesn't want him, too.
No, I think it's going to be
like the type of guy to build a franchise around. He might be the fucking guy to stand up for your superstars the first year and prove you're tough.
So I just want to get into this. After next season, Johnny Gaudreau and Mark Giordano will be UFAs. So it's literally your last year. And I think I'll check right now while I just throw it to you guys. But Josh, they both have expiring contracts. Would you trade them for picks, re-sign them, or what do you think the future of Gaudreau and Giordano are? Oh, and starting July 1st, Johnny Gaudreau has a 5-team trade list. So that's similar to the PK Subban situation. So I think he might be traded just because of this only 5-team list. So would you rather trade him to any team in the league, or would you rather do the 5-team list? And Mark Giordano has a list, but it's just looking on Cap Friendly here. It's a list of 19 teams. So both of them, you can kind of trade them throughout the whole league right now. So Josh, what would you do with those 2 players? Would you give them extensions, or what do you think?
I ain't giving. You got to make your mind up. I don't know what I would do, but you got to make your mind up. Do you want to build this team around Matt Tkachuk, which I think you should be doing? Those 2, like, you can't have those 3 players on the team. I don't think they're coexisting. It's kind of similar to the Winnipeg situation. I don't think they get along behind the scenes. Matt Tkachuk's one of those guys who will live and die by the sword for his team. But I just think the way he plays doesn't fit the way that these other 2 want to play. That Gaudreau wants to play, that Monahan wants to play. I think Monahan and Gaudreau, I don't think they're gonna be protected in this expansion draft. I don't know if they have to be, but I don't think they will be. One of them might be left open. And that'd be a good fit for Seattle. Maybe they need a fresh start. maybe a deal could be worked out. They can end up in, I don't know, Arizona or something. But they got to be separated. You got to get them out of Calgary because Calgary is going to need to. They got some work to do to become a team that it's going to be to reckon with. Like people were calling them like the second best team in Canada at the start of the season, and
That was insane.
I just never saw it. Right? So it's crazy that this is what it's come to, man. I mean, they've been eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right. So it's nuts, and I hope they can figure it out because it's always fun when Calgary is a good team because they're fun to watch. I don't hate them. So we'll see what goes on there.
So we kind of touched on it. Seattle, well, they finally put in their papers in so they can start signing entry-level players, players overseas. So they're officially a franchise right now. So I just want to ask you guys in general, do you think they should kind of go for a Vegas model and just pick whatever the best players? Or do you think it will still be collect draft picks, collect prospects, and just kind of see where we're at? Or like, Josh, what would your strategy be through this whole process if you're Ron Francis, the GM in Seattle?
It's going to be very difficult to follow what Vegas did because Vegas absolutely fleeced teams, and Vegas built that team dirty, man. Like they were robbing teams blind with these trades and who they selected and like the deals they made and all that.
Like, to be fair, like Marchessault, Smith, a couple of the highlight players for their first year, and Carlson, they actually had career years in points and goals that one season, which you can't predict as you pick them up.
Kind of the diamond in the roughs.
Yeah, correct. But they did do some good things, and I don't think Seattle's going to get that lucky. I think they will be a competitive team because it's just the way the expansion draft is structured. You are going to get some good players. And just of note, Vegas does not have to give up a player in this expansion draft, which I think is absolute bullshit.
That is hilarious.
I know.
They should go back on that rule. Like Vegas has been so good. It's like, nah, screw you guys. You have to give someone up.
They should have to give up 2 players. But anyway, it's like it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
It makes sense though because they haven't been drafting for as long. They don't have the players to give up. I mean, they have the NHL rostered ready players, but I mean,
I don't know. It's
who knows about the Henderson Silver Knights? What do they fucking got going on?
It's one of those weird NHL rules. But Matt, the way you worded it in the thing, you said should they take a rebuild model? Is that what you said?
Yep. Should they go right into a rebuild because they're guaranteed a top 5 pick or top 3? They're guaranteed a high pick just to start.
Okay, so you're not doing that because you have nothing to rebuild. You have no players right now, so.
Sorry, I meant rebuild in the terms of you're getting young assets. You know you're going to be bad for 3 years, and you're trying to build.
Well, but that's
instead of picking 27, 28-year-olds and trying to be good from the jump. That's kind of what I meant.
That's the thing, though, right? You want to be competitive first year because you want to impress these fans. They've sold out. They filled out their building. Season tickets are sold out. They know there's going to be fans in the building in Seattle because COVID-19 doesn't exist in the States anymore. So let's they're going to want to be competitive. So I think they're going to be making big moves. Ron Francis knows what he's doing. He's going to hire a good coach, and they're going to be a competitive team. And I think they're going to make a big splash with some of the players they get. Brandon?
Yeah. Like as I mentioned earlier, I think it's important to note that Vegas team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals that first year had a lot of career individual statistic players that just went off out of nowhere and just excelled with the ice time and the magnitude of the situation. It had a lot to do with the coach and the fan base. I think Vegas had a great situation. I think Seattle's looks very similar. And I think the old adage of like the rebuild is the worst team in the league way back when they drove in the 90s and whatnot in the early 2000s. I think you saw with the Vegas Golden Knights, like players regardless of age and even young studs, they're ready to play and play right away and they're looking for opportunities. And I think that we're going to see something similar. Someone's going to have a breakout year. They're not going to finish dead last and they're not going to have to need to have a rebuild model if they have, for example, no losing season to go off of. So I'm hoping that, Ron Francis comes in with his old mindset of competitiveness and attitude and energy. And, it'd be interesting to see the type of product that comes out of there because, now it's the type of thing that we grow as a hockey fan and can see more of the differences between the Vegas one and this one. And then in coming years, we can decide if those were two different, roads those two teams took or if they're going to take the same pathway eventually.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. And there's not too much we can predict right now because we don't know the draft order. We don't know who's been protected. We don't know who's available. We don't know like what free agents have re-signed and all that stuff. So It's going to be fun to do. I think closer to the time, we'll probably do our own, we're going to do our own draft.
Yeah, we're doing a mock draft for the three of us for sure.
Yeah, each have our own draft, and then we'll let the viewers vote who has the better team. That could be fun. So we have a little game. We got 2 games on the show. We play on Mondays. We play Yes, No, Why. And on whenever we're not playing that, we play a game called Matt's Debates. It's a play on words. So, Matt, how many questions we got today?
We got 4 questions, Josh. Okay, ready? First question. Would Connor McDavid be close to 100 points if he wasn't playing in the Canadian division? I saw this one on Twitter.
I'll say yeah, he would be. This guy's just unreal. The skill he has, the way he's able to make space on the ice, the way he can get his puck to a teammate who can just finish it off. He wheels into a game and you're like, oh, he's been quiet tonight. And you check the score sheet and the guy's just casually got 4 points. Like, it's crazy. It's just the way he's playing right now and the amount of points he has, you got to remember, he's been held off the score sheet 3 times by one team, right? Like, the Leafs shut him down for 3 games. So it's unreal what he's doing. I'll say, yeah, like, he's the best player in the world. He would be close to 100 points or already cleared it if he was playing other teams.
I'm going to go no. And the reason I think no is we kind of made fun of the Canadian teams the whole podcast. So I look at Ottawa, and I feel like every time him and Justin have played Ottawa, they all got 3 or 4 points.
Okay,
Vancouver has been bad. No, let me talk. Vancouver's been bad. They always destroy Calgary. The only thing we think it's closer than it is because they fight. But yeah, they fight, but Edmonton wins like 6-7-1. And also Winnipeg, they feasted on them. So I just do think if you're in another division with Pittsburgh, Washington, Boston, the Islanders in one division, or Vegas and Colorado, or even the 2 Florida teams in Carolina, I just think the other divisions aren't as questionable as this one. So, but like when I say he won't get 100 points, I mean, instead of 100, he will get 80. Like, I do think he'll get points, but I do think the Canadian division, more of the games are like 6-5. Brandon, what do you think? Oh, Josh, you have a rebuttal?
For now,
I
can't.
Go ahead, Brandon.
For now, I can't doubt him. And due to the way he just plays and performs and produces, yes, the dominant teams in every division are dominant and hard to play against. However, this year has been blown out of proportion by the fact that like some of the conferences have just been thrown out of the air and made up at the beginning of the season. You have like the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference mixed up into both of them, into all of the American divisions. And I think that if you were to somehow put the Oilers down there in any of those divisions, it doesn't really matter. Matchups will be matchups. And I think he could honestly beat up on the weaker teams, because I was going to mention, to Josh's Twitter argument last night, the Senators have been 7-1 in the last 9 games and are and they beat the Leafs a lot in this season, and they're somewhat of a competitive team. So I think they're a lot better than the worst teams in the other divisions, such as Detroit, Columbus, who else knows, whatever is down there as well. The California teams, I think he would just destroy some of those teams. I still think he gets 100.
Yeah, just to add on to Brandon's point and to rebuttal Matt's, I just pulled up the NHL goals against, like, worst teams. So he would. This is I'll go up to 15. So Philly, Buffalo, New Jersey, San Jose, Ottawa, Columbus, Chicago, Anaheim, Arizona, Detroit, St. Louis, Washington. You have to go.
Those are all teams other than one.
Those are all the way up till you get to the second Canadian team, which is Vancouver. So,
Good question though. I liked it.
I think he would still have 100 points. He'd beat up on these weaker teams.
Next.
Okay, we'll save this clip and we'll ask the same question next year and see how well he's doing. Okay, so with 13 teams clinching, who is your dark horse Stanley Cup favorite? So you can't say the obvious ones, Vegas, Colorado, Toronto. Who is your dark horse team, Josh? You want to start?
Florida, because they are dominating this year. They're doing so well. I think they're a strong team. They're a deep team. Their goaltending depth is phenomenal. I think they could put any 3 of their goaltenders in and have a great game. And they're surprising people. But I dark horse, that's a team that isn't being talked about enough. They are not being talked about enough for sure. And I just feel like they can make a deep run all the way to a cup final if needed.
Yeah, I'm gonna go stay right near with you and say the Carolina Hurricanes are gonna make just as a surprising impact, even though we've come to expect them maybe to be a playoff team. I remember the Bunch of Jerks episode and the playoff experience that had, and that kind of threw them onto the scene. Obviously, they had different players. Justin Williams but that's who they are. And now you're seeing their first place in that division, and they're kind of going to hopefully have a little bit of an easier play in to the first round. As Josh is mentioning, that if the Florida Panthers want to get all the way where they got to go through the beast of the East, and that is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Regardless of where they played this year, they're going to have their Stanley Cup team back to format and added. They're going to be fine when the playoffs hit, and Florida's going to have to go do the step that the Carolina Hurricanes did and the Columbus Blue Jackets did a couple of years ago by surprising a team in the first round and then establishing themselves in the playoffs next year and the season after. But I don't think they can do it all this year. I think Carolina has a little bit of experience to go off of and confidence right now. So let's go with them. I mean, obviously, I like to mention that Kirill Kaprizov would like to do it, and the Minnesota Wild would be a great surprise.
Yeah, right now, Brandon, first round is Tampa Bay, Florida. So you get your question answered pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I was looking at it.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's hard. It's gonna be hard. Like the Panthers are gonna probably play. Looks like Nashville, I'd say. So that's gonna be a little bit easier. Sorry, the Hurricanes are gonna play Nashville, and that's gonna be easy. But like that Panthers Tampa Bay and any other perfect world with the points they have and the seasons they have could be an Eastern Conference matchup. The finals
for sure.
Yeah. So you guys actually took mine, so I'm gonna go with one off the cuff. So you know what? I'll go Boston. And I just think it's kind of a credit to the whole organization, because if someone told me they lose Chara and Krug and they don't really lose a step, and now they have Taylor Hall, who kind of looks a lot better relative to the Sabres, which it's not that hard to do. But anyways, he looks a lot better. So I'll go Boston. I just kind of look at the division with Pittsburgh, Washington, and the Islanders, and I just think, like, yeah, Boston's a little bit older, but all those teams are older. You know what I mean? So, like, I just think that's a very interesting division. And I could see all four teams that have clinched, Washington, Pittsburgh, Boston, Islanders. I could see any of them walking out of that division, to be honest with you. So I'll go Boston, because I think that's like truly a dark horse team. But yeah, I'm just so excited for the playoffs. We'll definitely do a bracket for the pod, and we'll definitely talk about that later when it goes down. But next question. It's a basketball one. So LeBron James, he hurt his ankle. He was out 6 weeks. He came back for 2 games, and he re-hurt it. So they have no idea where he's going to come back. They might fall into that playoff format thing that we talked about last time. And a lot of debate shows are saying LeBron's got to come back. He's got to win. So my question is it fair to expect a 37-year-old LeBron James to make it to the finals because of his ankle injury and a stacked Western Conference? So, Josh, what do you think? You think LeBron can do it?
Let me say something to Josh, because I know how he's going to go about this regardless. I might have sent him the PR statement today, but I think LeBron and Lakers announced that LeBron's health will not be 100% remaining for the rest of the season, and he will be probably playing the playoffs injured, and it's not playing until the playoffs start.
I have a lot of opinions about LeBron James. I think he's a great basketball player. I think he's a great human being, like, you know, stuff he's done for charity and all that. But I also do think he's a little full of himself and tries to put odds against him when they aren't there. I don't know. You know what I mean?
That's a good way of putting it.
It just has that vibe about him. Like, he always seems like, oh, it's the world versus me, and you know, I can't do this, and the odds are there. And
I think that's, just to say that before you just to add content. Yeah. I think that's more just like pumping up his charity, and maybe more like the odds are against me in terms, oh, I didn't have a dad, poverty, that kind of stuff. So I think it's more like, see what I'm doing. Anyone could do it. Like, let's go. Everyone against us. Let's go. So like, I don't look too deep into that, but I understand what you're saying.
I know what you mean, and I don't watch as much basketball as you guys, but whenever I see this guy, he's making highlight reel plays, and like, he always seems to be doing well. I don't know what his health is. I don't know what his injury's like. He could be lying. The Lakers could be throwing up a smoke screen to throw people off, or maybe it's they've got a preset excuse there because they know, oh, we might not be making it out of the first or second round. We might not be making it out of the play-in. So they're just putting this up to kind of protect.
Yes.
Because it would seem kind of suspicious. They get eliminated first round and go, oh, LeBron wasn't healthy. Okay, then why didn't you let us know before? You know what I mean? It just seems kind of odd.
So answer the question.
Yeah, it's unfair to expect a 37-year-old to make it to the final if he is.
I agree. I love how the whole narrative and media changed up real quick, because a couple months, 6 months ago at the beginning of the season and during the start of the season, it's like Lakers this, Lakers bust, Lakers are bust, championship twice in a row, bust. Dennis Schroeder and AD, they're all like commenting when they play Call of Duty, like, bro, we ain't losing the Nets, we ain't losing. And now their season is starting to look very in jeopardy. They're actually tied for the 7th spot in the playoff situation with Portland right now. And I sent a little TikTok to Josh the other day about LeBron's opinion on the play-in format a year ago today, and then his opinion today. He actually had a lot of insight on the play-in format and liked the idea, encouraged the idea, and almost seemingly provided the format for the idea. So to see his complaints a year later when his team was falling to that spot, and in jeopardy of not even making the playoffs after being the second seed for the first couple half of the season. And jeopardize, here comes all the excuses, the injury, the play-in format, who knows, the travel, AD, Call of Duty. What's the next excuse going to be? I like Josh's point, because I think too, the fact that LeBron is one of the greatest human beings, advocates and athletes right now in the world of sport, I do agree that, to Josh's point, in interviews and his basketball narratives and the way he talks about how he is the greatest is put on by himself. Nobody is putting these odds against him now that we know who he is. Yes, he came from where he came from and has proved himself amazingly, but now he's 37 and making excuses still. Mm-hmm. So I think it is fair to judge him, because we were judging him fairly 2 months ago without the injury. And there's a statistic about this, I'm sure it's increased, but LeBron annually spends $1 to $2 million or more on body health generation and healing. And he puts that money into his body not to get hurt and to rehab quicker than others. So to say, oh, my ankle for the rest of my year, bro, my ankle for the rest of my career, it hurts too. But fuck, I'm not LeBron James. And I think that he's 37. I mean, Tom Brady, if he had a wrist injury, would it hinder him for the rest of it? Fuck off. So go play basketball. I mean,
bro, go on his Instagram page and look at the photos of him reading books. He's always on the first page. What about that?
Okay, yeah. So you guys took this question all over the place, but yeah, just give my answer. I think it is fair to expect him to come out of the West, because I just look at, if him and AD are on the court, I think
it's fair to have this high expectation. I agree. Sorry, it is fair to have this. Because everyone was crying about him earlier. So let's keep that energy. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, I just look at you and AD are so good, and I've seen LeBron come back from 3-1. I've seen him go into a bubble and be a lot more focused than everybody else and get a chip. So I think yeah, man, I know it's tough, and I know the extra games in the play-in are going to be tough, but other teams are battling injuries like Donovan Mitchell, you know what I'm trying to say, Jamal Murray. So I just kind of look at it as dude, you and AD are still the best 1-2 combo in the West. Maybe not in the league, but in the West for sure. I think if I'm a Lakers fan, yeah, I'm expecting us to go to the title. I'm expecting it to be us versus Kevin Durant and James Harden. Yeah, I know it's going to be tough, but I don't know. I'm pulling for LeBron. And I know it might sound like we're hating on him just for all the things you said, but it's not really a hating thing. It's more recognizing yeah, everyone knows the situation. We don't need to keep talking about the situation. Let's just best team wins. You know what I'm trying to say? I think basketball is kind of the only sport that doesn't really have
play the game.
Yeah, I don't think basketball is the only sport that really has that narrative. It could be the conference final when the Raptors were in there versus Golden State, and they talked about everything except for the Raptors and fucking Golden State. You know what I mean? Basketball always has that narrative, because LeBron didn't even make the playoffs that year, but I heard about LeBron, and it wasn't even him, it's just in general. So I just kind of think yeah, if you're always a talking point, I think you kind of do need to deliver in big moments, but I think he will. I think they'll have a good playoffs, but yeah, it's the next and final question. This is actually a really good question. I'm excited to hear you guys talk about it. So you guys starting a wrestling podcast, and I just want to talk about that. So what do you think wrestling should do to promote their brand, and where do you think beginners should start like me? I've never really gotten into wrestling, so where do you think a beginner should be? Hockey, people will start just taking you to a game, teaching you Gretzky and the history. So what do you guys just
Josh will probably break it down the best. I'd love to have him go first analytically and personally, and then I can throw in how I loved it so much as an outsider, because I was a hockey player growing up as well. But Josh is inclined to entertain watchers his whole life, and I think he might give you a good start.
Yeah, one thing you gotta accept if you're gonna get into pro wrestling and watch it and enjoy it is not real. It is fake. It is predetermined. It's an entertainment product. The name entertainment is literally in the title WWE. So keep in mind that it's not real. There are going to be some things that are funny and don't make sense, and you're like, how to get up from that, blah, 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 whatever. What you got to do when you go in, Matt, let me ask you this. When you go into a Transformers movie, are you like, that's unrealistic? A car can't turn into a giant robot.
No, I don't think that way, no.
You sit down and you enjoy the mess that's on TV and you embrace it. That's what you got to do with pro wrestling. Put it on and watch it. There was an event last night called Blood and Guts presented by AEW, and it was 10 guys in a cage. The match doesn't finish until one guy says, I've had enough. It was a mess. It was messy. Guys are being hit with chairs and chainsaws, and someone was thrown off the top of a cage into concrete. Obviously, it's not real concrete, but you just got to accept, you're damn, that was wildly entertaining. Where you should start with Raw or SmackDown. That's kind of where you begin to go into it, and then just get into the good stuff. NXT and AEW have a better product, more entertaining, more wrestling.
Right. So Josh, let me cut you off real quick because I want you
yeah.
to talk about this. This part is you're gonna go off of what I have to say is that I think the greatest thing about wrestling is the characters and siding with them, not siding with just one or just two, is just opening yourself to the characters of WWE and knowing that they do have different personalities. I think it's funny to mention that, we always talk about these interviews with NHL players, and I know Matt loves how boring the NHL players are and how, the worst type of interviews are done. There's this one guy named Riddell or whatever. What's his Randy Orton's new tag team?
Matt Riddle.
This guy 5 times literally has had a script. They have scripts to say for promos, and he's been live on TV and he's just stopped talking and said, "Yeah, I forget my script," and he's walked away. Like, it's actually entertaining to watch him because he looks so out of it, stoned or drunk, that you think he's actually stoned or drunk. But sometimes you feel like it's not his character, or it is his character because he has lines to say and he forgets them. So it's kind of comical that way. As a young man growing up, young fan growing up rather, and a young man, it was important with me to understand the nationality of these players because I always thought Canadian wrestlers were superior because I was Canadian, and the fact that they made it to the biggest wrestling entertainment industry in the world in the States was a huge testament. So Christian, Edge, Kevin Owens, the Hearts. So growing up, these are the names of the Canadian wrestlers. So it's nice to familiarize yourself with the history of our country and the wrestling world. But you want to know where like the main characters are from and their stories, because from a screen perspective, and I can attest to this, is like one of the biggest faces in the WWE, Roman Reigns. You look at him and you might not like his character, and you might not like the fact that he's really dominant and he looks the same as kind of the other guys, and everyone's a similar product these days. When everyone back in the day was Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and John Cena, and you had all these different personalities. Now you have Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins. They all kind of look the same. I know Josh can attest to that. But Roman Reigns is he has had cancer remissions. He's a strong individual outside of the ring, and he has all these testaments to his personality that makes him such a strong character. And then you really understand and respect the fact that he's putting himself on the line and to play wrestling, to be a wrestler. And Roman Reigns has a great story, and he's strong, and you can see that they're not all just wrestling dummies, rather, and a lot of them have educational backgrounds. I think it's important for me to realize that the people doing these stunts are just as real as me and you, and I think it's entertaining. They're getting Bad Bunny, they're getting a lot more people outside the industry involved. So hopefully your favorite rapper might come onto the show one day, and AEW comes in and all of a sudden Shaquille O'Neal is slamming through tables. So I think the fact that the thing for me is that as Matt would probably enjoy the most are the more extreme things, the chair hits, the table smashes, the ladders. Look up Jeff Hardy montages, people coming off the top rope, doing flips. I think that the most extreme things will make you appreciate it. And then, you can expect, you can always expect things to be a little bit boring sometimes though.
Yeah. Like just get into it, just enjoy it, pick a character, run with it.
Yeah. So just to recap, like just kind of for the new viewers and anyone who wants to listen to your podcast, obviously I get it's more just like kind of look at the storylines. Don't expect too much. Just go in, get a beer, open a bag of chips, just kind of relax and enjoy it. Yeah, like you guys said, like you guys said, like a bunch of celebrities make guest appearances, so it is kind of cool and fascinating. So that's it for the Orient Sportscast. Is there anything else you guys want to add? Or no, we good? Okay, yeah. See you.
Wait, like, comment, subscribe, follow us. Links down below.
Yep.
Check out the website.
Check out the website.
Check out Josh's article. I'll be in the description below, and we'll see you on Monday. Goodbye.